Good morning and welcome everybody. Thank you very, very much for joining us. It's a great pleasure for me to be here today. I hope to be co-opening this event with our Minister for Science, Research and Innovation, Amanda Salloway, although I know there have been one or two connection difficulties there, as tends to be occasionally the case. It used to be finding our way to events, now it's finding our way through to the screen. Anyway, I'm really, really pleased to be opening an event on such a fascinating and important subject, which is women and power. Now, women leaders have made, and of course do make, a massive difference in the world. In my own field, in the Foreign Office, we now have women ambassadors in Washington, New York, in Berlin, Beijing, in Rome, in Tokyo. It's no longer unusual, quite the reverse, to have women in the most senior positions. But despite all that progress, women remain underrepresented in the senior ranks of the Foreign Office at only 37% of our senior management, and remain underrepresented at the highest positions of society, whether in government, academia, or the private sector. And despite this being a fight for women for many, many years, we still have not made the progress that we need to make in what is still too male-dominated a world. And for too long and too often, women's voices have been silenced and women's faces and achievements have been hidden. And we know that women's presence in power is crucial. Where women have little or no voice, societies simply underachieve. And there's a lot that governments can do to help, and that's why the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office at a global level, and us here in the British Embassy in Madrid, in our little way, see women's political empowerment, participation and leadership as a core part of what we do. It's a core part of our mission. Getting more women into power gives voice to a marginalized section of society, helps create female role models, which is so important, and catalyzes change towards greater equality in society. And so that's really why we're here this morning, to discuss the evolution of our power structures and the role of women in these, in the past, in the present, and in the future. And we have with us a very mixed, a very diverse panel of speakers with very different expertise and different backgrounds, ranging from science through to medieval history. And you might ask why this panel. We've asked ourselves that too. And the answer is because we think that it's the diversity, if you like, of thought and the diversity of participation which gives such richness. And I, as I said at the beginning, I have really been looking forward to this. And one of the reasons I've been looking forward in particular to this is partly because I have huge admiration for those who will be participating in our panel, and partly because I haven't really got the faintest idea what they're going to say. So that adds a particular element of interest for me. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand over very shortly, I think, to our Minister, Amanda Salloway. Wonderful. Who is co-opening this event with me. But before I do, I just wanted to say a big thank you to all the team who've worked behind the scenes to put this together. I think that putting on virtual events is certainly more stressful than putting together physical events. You never quite know till the last minute whether somebody is going to connect. At least if you've got somebody in the room, you know they're in the room and they'll be able to make themselves heard. It's not quite the same with virtual events. So many thanks to both to my team from the Embassy who've worked so hard on this, obviously to IE University and to CNIO. Thanks very much, and over to you, Minister.
Well, thank you very much. And we have, ironically, I mean, it's brilliant as you talk about this virtual world, but ironically, we have just been technologically challenged. So hopefully everybody can now hear and see us. And thank you to all the help that I've been having to actually get here. So thank you so much. It's a real great pleasure to join you today. And I really welcome events like this one, bringing people together from different countries and fields of expertise to share their experiences and perspectives. And International Women's Day is about celebrating the incredible achievements of women across the globe, but it's also a chance to reflect on the challenges we face and actions we still have to take. And the UK and Spain have a strong relationship in science and innovation. And our scientists have been working together to tackle the pandemic, build on the relationships and expertise developed over many years. And I'm delighted that the UK will be association to Horizon Europe, which will support further cooperation between our researchers. And I really want to encourage UK and Spanish researchers and businesses to work together and produce excellent bids for Horizon Europe. When I spoke to Spanish Science Minister Duque, we discussed the importance of collaboration, our shared challenges, and we also spoke about the need to improve quality, equality, diversity, and inclusion in the whole of the research sector. So as UK Science Minister, I am privileged to be able to meet with prominent female scientists and researchers who are experts in their fields, whether that's in the R&D, the space industry, or engineering. And over the past year, it's been brilliant to see scientists from UK and Spain heading up global action to address COVID-19. And in particular, the role that have been played by women in response to this. And this includes heroes like Professor Sarah Gilbert of the University of Oxford, who's really been the brains behind developing the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And also Professor Laura Lechuga from Spain's National Scientific Research Council, who is heading up the COMBAT project, which aims to produce a rapid, inexpensive and highly sensitive test for diagnosing COVID-19 from the first day of infection. And I'm so pleased that UK and Spain are helping to lead the way, not just in the science to tackle COVID, but really in setting an example with female leadership. And of course, though, there is always a lot more to do. And despite the success of leading female scientists, there are still significant challenges worldwide with respect to equality, diversity and inclusion. And I think scientists around the world report issues around gender equality, inflexible working conditions, harassment, bullying and discrimination. And these issues really do absolutely need to be addressed. And so today, a day when we highlight the essential contribution of women to our society and to science and research, we can confidently say that the more that we can do to encourage women and girls that a career that sector we need to be convinced them it's the right choice for them. And the UK government really continues to push the agenda for more women in the R&D sector. And I've been delighted to oversee government schemes, including the Women in Innovation Awards, where I was yesterday. And these awards are designed to support and fund women with excellent ideas to innovate in UK businesses and to boost the economy. And it's amazing that since the time when the awards were first introduced in 2016, the number of women leading application for grants to Innovate UK has increased by 70%, a massive 70%, with more than 1,700 women joining the Women in Innovation community. And that's absolutely fantastic news. And the UK government is also doing a huge amount in terms of apprenticeships to get women into science and related subjects. And since the government's apprenticeship reforms, we've really seen a concerted effort by industry and government to encourage more women into digital and engineering apprenticeships. In addition to this, the UK government has also introduced boot camps that specifically aim to support women to access training in a range of digital and technical qualifications, including subjects known to be traditionally male-dominated. And we're committed to ensuring brilliant women can come to the UK from countries like Spain and have developed the new graduate visa and the global talent visa as well, which add increased flexibility and opportunity to routes to help talented individuals from around the globe to study and live and start careers here. The new Office for Talent are working to ensure the UK's talent offer is stronger than ever for students and those building careers and those who are already world leaders in their fields. Research mobility and knowledge exchange are absolutely vital for a healthy R&D system. And I hope the UK associating to Horizon Europe will support further cooperation and mobility between our researchers. And when we look forward to the future, it's undeniable that science will be crucial in helping to boost the economy, create jobs, build back better from the effects of COVID-19. And it is undeniable as well that women have a critical role to play in this. It's critical to the ambition, and that increasingly their participation in STEM-related subjects in which they're dramatically underrepresented is of vital importance. And to pave the way forward to achieving our vision for global collaboration, future for Science, we published the Research and Development Roadmap in July 2020. And this roadmap was the start of the discussion which has led to us developing an R&D people and culture strategy. And this will set out a direction for the R&D sector needs to take to ensure the UK has the best people we need at all levels, working in a culture that brings out the best in everyone and delivers the best outcomes for the country. And that means creating an R&D environment where people from all backgrounds and experiences can flourish. An environment where young girls and women are encouraged to pursue diverse and interesting careers that push the boundaries of our scientific knowledge. And as Minister for Science and the mother of 2 daughters and grandmother to a granddaughter, I know how important it is that science supported, that science is supported. And how important is that anyone, irrespective of their background or gender, has the opportunity to succeed in R&D. And that's why I'm so pleased that our 2 governments are committed to ensuring that women can thrive, they can flourish, and they can lead in roles across the R&D sector. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. So welcome everyone today to the conversation about women and power. We have more than 400 people signed up to this session, and we're going to be following a theme that is the International Women's Day theme this year, which is Choose to Challenge. It's designed to inspire individuals to challenge biases, question stereotypes, and of course celebrate the achievements of women around the world. This Women's Day comes a year since the pandemic struck, creating a health crisis that has in many ways served to highlight the precariousness of the equality women have so far achieved. Now, we're very privileged to have with us 3 incredible women who've reached the pinnacle of their fields and who can offer us, I think, very different wealths of knowledge, reaching back into the depths of time from the representation of women at the birth of civilization through the transmission of ideologies in the Middle Ages to the future of women in the world of scientific research. So what does the term women and power mean to our panelists? I'm very excited to find out, but let me first give a brief introduction. Mary Beard is Professor of Classics at Newnham College, Cambridge. She's the author of A History of Ancient Rome and the best-selling author of what has fast become the modern feminist must-read, Women in Power, a Manifesto. She's known on our screens for bringing ancient civilizations alive with her series Meet the Romans and Civilizations, and is recognised here in Spain very much because she was awarded the most prestigious prize here, the Princess of Asturias Award for Humanities in 2016. We also have Susana Torres, who is a leading academic here in Spain, having earned a PhD and Dr. Europus in Slavic philology from Cambridge University and Madrid's University Complutense. She's also studied in Paris and the US, and she's been a member of several international research groups and has been appointed the visiting scholar at the universities of Harvard, Ohio State, and Cambridge. Her current research focuses on the transmission and representation of ideologies of power from the Middle Ages until now in Russia, I believe. And she is currently Associate Professor of Humanities at the IE University and IE Business School. And her most recent book, Los Antiguos Esclavos, was published in September 2020. And we're also joined by Maria Blasco, who is one of the leading scientists in Spain, not female scientists, leading scientists, an expert in molecular biology, who has focused her research on demonstrating the importance of telomeres and telomeres, and I've probably said that wrong, in cancer, as well as in age-related diseases. And she is currently director of the Spanish National Research Centre. So I'm just going to remind everyone who is watching this that there will be an opportunity to ask questions. So if you have anything comes to mind, pop it in the Zoom chat and hopefully it will get to me and I can ask them at the end. So first of all, Mary Beard, in your excellent manifesto, Women and Power, you talk about the culture of silencing of women and how it has become ingrained over centuries, culminating the exclusion of power that women have seen today. women, how men were required to silence women as part of their sort of coming of age in order to become powerful men themselves, and how women have been relegated in a role where they spoke out only as victims, or if claiming power, then by taking on the attributes of men. So we think things have changed. Arguably, they have changed, not least with the Me Too movement. So my question to start is, how far have we actually come since Roman times, and have women now found their voice?
Happily, we've come on quite a long way. I mean, I think we've got an awful lot to do, but I think that women, particularly in kind of weeks like this, ought to remember that a bit of celebration is in order. And when I think that my mother was born before women in the United Kingdom had the vote in general elections, I think, that's been, a century of a revolution in women's opportunities, and so I think we should pat ourselves on the back. I think, however, that there are bigger jobs to do, and I think that for me, looking back in the long history, right back to 800 BC, really, and probably beyond, the point is there are things that all women face, and I think this is not just about the particular things that women in the physical sciences face, or the humanities face, or women in business, or whatever. There are all kinds of micro problems, but I think that the really important thing, and what every woman I've ever spoken to recognises, is the sense that women's voices are not still taken as authoritative or serious as men. And I think that women do find themselves still feeling not listened to. And I think that's not just because they can't speak. It's only worth speaking if someone will hear you. And I think whether it's in R&D, as the minister was talking about, or in the study of the ancient world, those issues about whether we can hear what women are saying are really important, and we miss out if we don't.
Susanna, what do you feel that we're still being silenced?
Oh yes, very much so, I'm afraid. We are still being silenced, and as Mary has very aptly just pointed out, sometimes we are allowed to speak, but we are not taken seriously. There are 100 different little, paternalistic gestures that we come across all the time. So our voices are being allowed to sound, which was not the case, of poor Penelope, the case that Mary speaks about her in her book at the very beginning, poor Penelope being silenced by her own son. Maybe we are not that bad, and I do agree with Mary. We have to congratulate ourselves for having achieved all this, but still, we have a long way ahead of us. The fact that we are not at the top positions of management or politics, so very often in many degrees that we have, that what it has been called a glass ceiling, which I don't think is very made of glass anymore, but it's because they don't trust us. And I think we have to try to reinforce the fact that we are not only, have the privilege to speak up, we should have also the encouragement to be listened to, and to be listened to as if we were, to a certain extent, adults.
Maria, in the field of science, do you feel that women are sort of held back by stereotypes of having to be feminine, or how can we make our voices heard without sort of taking on the attributes of men?
Well, I like to start by quoting scientist Liz Blackburn. She got the Nobel Prize for Medicine or Physiology for the discovery of telomeres and telomerase in 2009. And she said in a recent video that she always felt safe in science. And I think she meant that in the scientific careers, the merits are based on the recognition is based on the merits. So I think it's a quite safe field for women in terms of that the recognitions you're going to have are correlated with your merits. However, in science, like in other professions, there is also this glass ceiling. This means that there are women that are prepared to top level. There are even more women than men. For instance, in all the careers that have to do with medicine or biology or chemistry, there are more women than men, which are highly prepared. But yet the research is still directed by men. So the women still are not 50% of the directors of research. And this is important because this means what is being researched is mainly decided still by male scientists, and this is correlated with funding and of course with recognition. So we still in the world of science, even though it's a quite fair world because recognition again is correlated with merits, we still need more women to reach the top positions and direct science.
What do you think can be done to help women want to further their career in the scientific world? I mean, I think in Spain, there's more female scientists studying at universities than men, actually. The balance is very good. But as you say, they're not reaching those top positions. Do you think that things such as quotas are a good idea in terms of top positions?
Yeah, science is international. There isn't a difference between Spain and the UK or the US. No. Also in these other countries, because we scientists work in an international world, so it doesn't make sense as Spanish science versus American science or British science. I think the problems have been very well recognized. There are many studies that have identified which are the little things that are making it a little bit more difficult for women than men to reach the top positions. And of course, you have to do with stereotypes, with lack of self-confidence. Even the women that reach the top, they have this so-called imposter syndrome, which they tend to not be very comfortable because they are very few in the top and they think that maybe they didn't deserve to reach that position. This is something that women suffer, and of course there is the trouble to have family life and also professional life, because women, we are still the ones that are taking care of the children or the older people, so all this makes it a little bit more difficult for women to reach the top positions. But this can be corrected. This can be corrected with changes in the institutions where you are working.
Mary. Just going back to that.
Can I pick up something that Maria said, because I very much agree with her, but I know all about glass ceilings, and I suppose I've been lucky, and it always seems a bit strange. All people say, how can you talk about voicelessness when your voice is everywhere? And I take that, but I think that we sometimes concentrate far too much on the women who are at the very top or nearly at the very top, and have this kind of image of what we need to do is kind of let those few women through that barrier and get them really there. I mean, I think that women not being listened to or women not feeling that their voices are taken seriously is a problem that goes right through careers. And I think we need to think, we do need to think about how women get one notch further ahead, in that rather sort of brutal image of breaking through the glass ceiling. But I think we need to think about the people, the library assistants, the lab technicians, the junior lecturers, the students, and because it's by finding a climate in which they feel taken notice of that will be the way we solve this. I mean, in the long term. And I think there is nothing worse, and it's something that there's quite a few things worse, but in a kind of career structure, there's nothing worse, and every woman knows this, than opening your mouth at a meeting, however small scale, and having the guys look round, ignore what you say, and go on talking about something else. And you sort of know you're on the out crowd. And we have to solve that from the bottom, not just the top.
How do we do that on a day-to-day basis as women?
Well, I think you just have to be fearless in saying, hang on, Susan said something. You're at a meeting. And, I've seen this hundreds of times when they say, yeah, thank you very much. Now, what I was saying was, you say, hang on, let's wait. And I think, sometimes you can use a bit of humour, a bit of irony. I find that men always look a bit sort of shocked and shut up a bit when you say, come on, boys, just challenge the buggers.
Yeah. Fiona, if I could add to.
Please.
No, absolutely. I think there is a fight to be made, and there is a long fight ahead of us in the little details in the day-to-day lives, as Mary is saying. I mean, it's not just the big names, the big quotas, but it's actually the little detail, the day-to-day, the comment, the look, the, oh no, here we go again. And it's true, sometimes we are tired. Sometimes you're just tired of having to constantly correct people when they speak, or the way they address, or how, the comments they make. But I think this is exactly the fight we cannot give up on. I mean, we need to change the approach of all of us, not just, the big names, but in the little details, the day-to-day basis. Sometimes it's, I think it's basically education is the key to all this. We have to educate within, the households in a better approach to gender roles. That goes without saying. But we certainly have to, I think, constantly negotiate. And when we give up the negotiation, and when we are tired and someone says something that you think, oh my God, and you just say, okay, I don't want to get into this one today. As Mary says, just try to say something. I think when they become very nervous when you become sarcastic, because that, as everybody knows, a sense of humor is a sign of intelligence, and they just don't see that one coming.
It's difficult though, because we've gone, Mary. Yeah. Please.
No, I just wanted to add to that I think, and I've been guilty of this. I'm not blaming anybody.
All of us.
We tend to get very angry. You go home, you get angry, and you express your views in terms of outrage. Now, I think there is a real part for outrage and anger to play in changing things, but there are other modes of rhetoric. There are other ways of making your point, and I think that we can, a little bit of sarcasm, humour, joking, what the English would say, taking the piss, those are all weapons in not just our armoury, because the struggle is not just about making things fairer for women. Of course it's about that. It's also making things better for everybody, for blokes too.
If I can add something, I think that's perfect, but I think, it's also good to have a little bit of power, right? Because if women are not at the top and can change things, and this is something that I have seen, so all these comments that are, that you hear and really are they are not nice for women, etc., they disappear if there is a woman on top and is a woman that is concerned about gender equality. For instance, here at the CNIO now, we have distinguished seminars, we organize conferences, which are international conferences, and half of the speakers have to be women. And this is something that at the beginning was a little bit shocking for some people, but now is perfectly fine. And we really have very top women giving these talks. And I think this is also a way to change things. So if you have the power to change things, then it's better. It's easier.
Yeah.
You go.
Please.
Sorry. No, I just wanted to say.
Something to say.
Yeah. Well, just to follow on from what Maria says, that's obviously right, and it also, this is International Women's Day week, and so we're talking about women, but that women also, or thinking about what to do about women, should open the door to other forms of diversity. To people who are people of colour, people who have different sexualities and whatever. And I think we should, we can learn from how we foster the careers of women and open an institution more to women, to open an institution to people who are diverse in different ways.
I wanted to ask what you felt about how women have very different roles. Like we can redefine the concept of powerful women, and yet we still have to keep on with those traditional roles that many women have, that of being a mother, that of being the main homemaker, and there's sort of a double life in many women have to lead a sort of double life, being powerful at work and still nurturing at home. Do you feel that the traditional role has changed much, and can it change further? I think, can we escape the fact that we have physiological differences to men, that we have wounds, and that we are always going to be the ones that bear children? Is that holding us back, or?
We don't get ourselves pregnant by and large, So it takes more than one woman to make a baby, normally.
Yeah.
In places like Sweden, for example, where men are forced to take equal paternity leave, and there's a much more sort of balanced division of care that seems to free up women more, and yet it's still something that isn't really done that much. At least here in Spain, paternity leave isn't taken in the same way as it is by women.
Well, if I can say something, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Susanna, do you want to go ahead?
No, please go ahead. Go ahead, after you.
Of course, this glass ceiling is not due to biological differences. So this is both men and women can take care of children, and I think it's a matter of institutional changes. If you can make them in an institution, you can try to have, for instance, flexible working hours, so men or women that want to take care of their families, they can do it, or try to not put meetings at times where you are excluding those men or women that are taking care of their children. So I think there are many things that you can do from an institution, if you have the power to do it, to try to eliminate these difficulties for women. But in terms of biological differences being responsible of this, I completely disagree with that. So I think it's a social, cultural thing.
No, absolutely. May I, or I don't know if, no, absolutely. I think the problem is that we are always put to choose. It seems that having a family is our choice, and that we are faced with a choice that our male colleagues are not faced with. They can, certainly here in Spain, they can, for the most part, have a family and a professional career. And very often for us is you either stop your professional career to have a family, you work 20 hours a day completely going around and you become a superwoman, or you spend almost all your salary in paying extra help because, you are free to work if you want to, but you cannot sort of leave your responsibility of taking care of the household. And I think that the fact that we are put to that choice is tremendously unfair. And the results of the surveys that we have carried on in this country for the last 10 years tell us that very often women at the apex of their career face the most difficult choice in their lives that their male counterparts very often don't even consider. I don't think I have met any of my colleagues who ever thought, well, I had to choose at one point between having children or developing my academic career. But I've heard many women having, have to make that choice, at least for a few years. Yes.
Do you think that part of this is because society has traditionally told women that in order to be happy and successful, we have to have it all. So we can be successful in our careers, but we're all still looking for that partner, that the sort of the Jane Austen type novels and the Hollywood happy endings where we have to have it all. We have to find that true love and
The problem.
Do you think we need
yes.
new role models?
Oh, certainly. I mean, the problem with Jane Austen novels, don't get me wrong, I love Jane Austen novels. I've read them all my life, is that, that the whole quest is to find yourself a husband or a partner, which is more or less the same sort of the literary myth of the Hollywood thing. And I always tell my students, nobody tells you after the big kiss or the romantic finale what happens in the first 5 years or 10 years of matrimony and whether they actually endured or not. I think that is a false trap. Everybody is happier having everything, not only women. Men are also happier when they can have their professional careers and a super nice family. It's not that only us want it all. We all want it all. The problem is that we are forced to choose very often when they are not.
We haven't really taken on board the totally simple idea that children are the responsibility of both men and women, right? And it's a very, very simple idea, and you kind of can hear the disequilibrium coming out when you get people in Parliament, for example, recently over the pandemic in the UK Parliament have said things like, thank you very much to the mothers who've been doing so much extra at home. And you think that, that's true, that is actually true, but it reinforces the idea that because women are the ones who actually carry the baby, that their responsibility goes on and on. Babies are not made by one individual alone. They're made by more than one person, and more than one person of whatever gender has responsibilities for them, and more widely, society in general has responsibilities. And that seems to me absolutely simple and totally unrecognised within the general kind of popular culture.
Yes, absolutely agree. Actually, it's one of the few legal differences between men and women, right? The paternity leaves are different in the majority of countries.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
this is a legal discrimination.
Yeah.
So Mary, you mentioned the coronavirus, and obviously after the year that's seen more women likely to be furloughed, lose their jobs, they've carried the burden of homeschooling, they've dealt with the brunt of domestic drudgery, and they've become increasingly fearful about their futures, the future jobs, and an erosion of the equalities that we have won. Is there anything positive, do you think, that has come out of the pandemic for women? And Maria, I'm going to ask you first because as the minister said at the beginning, it's been an opportunity for some women to really shine in their fields and to get the recognition that they deserve.
Yeah, well, there has been already studies about how it impacted the pandemic on women, at least in women scientists, and the impact has been negative. So I think it has impacted more negatively on women than in men, and this is partially due to the fact that if you are working at home, in general, women not only have to do their work, professional work, but also take care maybe of children. And it has been measured and is published that the number of papers published by women has decreased compared to those of men that have been maintained. Having said that, that's the negative part. The positive part is, I think, that not a lot of people know that some of the biggest advances in the fight of COVID-19 disease came from the research of women. I would like to mention, the minister has mentioned already two of them, which are very important. I would like to mention two more. One is a Chinese scientist. Her name is Shi Zhengli, and she was the first one to sequence the new virus. This was done in a very fast manner. She is actually an expert in viruses coming from bats. She's known as the Bat Woman because she's really a world expert in viruses coming from bats. And her research in the last decades has been very important to have a fast sequencing of the virus and to have tests to detect people that are infected with the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And the other woman is from Hungarian origin. She's working in the US. Her last name is Kariko, and she was the first one to use RNA molecules to try to cure diseases. And this has been the basis for the RNA vaccines that have been used already in millions of people to prevent infection by the SARS-CoV-2.
Mary, do you think that the coronavirus and the culture of working from home has helped that sort of balance? Because men are also working from home, so are they stepping up?
Yeah, that's true, and I think that you hope that after all the terrible tragedy that the coronavirus has represented, you hope that something will in some way come out of it, and possibly rethinking some of our working practices and where we work and how we work and when we work will emerge, and that might be to the benefit of some women. I think there was a bit of over-optimism at the beginning of home working, where people thought, oh, yippee, this is the end of office culture, and we'll all live a more kind of rounded and balanced life. I tend to think now that some women in particular are desperate to get back to the office, for heaven's sake. That there is a kind of way in which my nightmare vision of the future is that women will work from home and they'll clear up the kids' stuff before they start, and they will put the supper on, in the middle of the afternoon, and they will fit their work around the domestic sphere. And men will still go off to the office, maybe 3 or 4 days a week, where they will have the kind of culture, eyeball to eyeball, face to face, that makes changes happen, that creates initiatives in the workplace. And I think that we have to be a bit careful about being too romantic about these flexible working patterns. And, I think that we've got to think that if we are going to do what my government calls building back better, we need everybody on board for that. We need women and men, we need non-scientists as well as scientists, and we don't want to create a new underclass of women somehow pinned to the home because they can sort of work from there. Well, the husband goes back out to the office, has a great time.
Susanna, what's your experience been of the of coronavirus and working from home? How's it sort of affected the way you work, and how do you think has it improved it or made it more difficult?
I have a very easy situation in the sense that we have at IE we have kept our classes. We were online and hybrid learning from the very beginning. We have been able to work remotely. That is not a problem. I'm a scholar who works with books, plenty of them around here, not a problem either. But my concern is exactly what Mary is saying about how we can be taken back into the shadows of the household, and lose again the public space that it took us, our grandmothers and our mothers, so much effort to conquer. And if we are withdrawn within the sphere of the household because it's more convenient, because you don't need to take the car, because as Mary is saying, you can do the household chores. But my problem is we really need to reorganize the private sphere. We've done a lot of fighting outside, but certainly my perception, at least in a great majority of the households in this country, is she is still in charge. Let me just give you one little piece of data from a survey that one of the foundations in which I'm a member of the board just did released some results of several surveys. The majority, these were surveys done on children when they were shown pictures of different role models, right? When the children, and I'm talking about children between the age of 4 and 8 and 9, something like that, see a cartoon of a man, for example, sweeping or vacuum cleaning, while the woman is reading a book or watching television, the majority of 70% or more of those children label that image as wrong, incorrect, not happening. Whereas the same, but with the roles changed, the man sitting in the sofa watching television while the woman was sweeping, they identified as correct, true, it happens. This is what we have to change, and it takes. This is not a 100 yards run. This is a long marathon. It's going to take us a long time. But certainly, I think the COVID we are in the danger of regressing in those advances of and being withdrawn, if only for the practicality of it, being withdrawn within the household and then being loaded with those chores that nobody wants to do. Let's be honest, but they have to be done and they have to be shared.
Could I just say to Susanna that? Sorry.
I was going to do a quick reminder to ask people to put questions in the Zoom chat.
Sorry, Fiona.
Okay, now
I just want to say it's not only children who have those mental images. I mean, I think that's the problem. I mean, if somebody says to me, "Shut your eyes and think of a professor," I see a man with a beard in a white coat, and I am a professor, but I never see me. And so those images that children come up with, they're also the images that we hold in our heads too, even age 66.
Future is theirs. That's what I'm concerned. My hope is maybe not my generation anymore. Yeah. My hope is the future.
That's right. Yeah.
Mary, I wanted to ask you about the sort of misogyny that women in power, and you've unfortunately experienced this. I think being sort of a public figure, being a professor, and not maybe being a white middle class male talking about these things. Especially, the internet is supposed to give us a voice, women a voice. We have the same ability to interact, on Twitter and that sort of thing. But and yet we're constantly in fear of being trolled, basically. And how do you deal with that? How can women deal with that?
It's hard, and I think everybody, and there's no right answer. You have to deal with it in a way that you feel comfortable with. I mean, I tend to reply to them and say, "Excuse me, I don't really think you do want to cut my tongue out," and actually challenge them. I think that the internet and social media are still quite young, and we still, 20, 30 years on, haven't learned how to deal with them. I think that probably more of the men who troll women on the internet are, sad, inadequate men. They're not, some of them are very nasty, I'm sure, but most of them are sad, disinhibited, and I feel sort of sorry for them in a way. What I think is the big takeaway point I get out of internet trolling, however, is that when men feel angry or they feel disempowered or whatever, when they do that, the rhetoric they have for expressing that tends to be a misogynistic one. That it's not, I'm not blaming them of being inherently misogynist. They may or may not be. But I do know that when you want to express your anger as a disempowered man, you use the rhetoric of misogyny to do it. And that, again, I think is something that is absolutely fundamental about the inequity of how the world is.
Another question, because I know that this is one thing that women sort of have to deal with, that we're constantly, women in position of power are judged by the way that they look and the way that they speak, the way that they dress, in a way that powerful men don't have to consider. How can we sort of redraw that and claim our femininity in positions of power without having to conform to this sort of stereotype of femininity? Is it possible?
If I may say something, I think I was never concerned about that. I always dressed as I liked. And I think it's a matter of having more women on the top, more women in power. then you will have all the diversity necessary in power also for women, and there will not be so many stereotypes as how a woman has to look like, because all women are not the same. They don't like to dress the same way, and the problem now is that there are so few women in power that it's very easy to pick up on stereotypes, so, and how they dress, etc. So I think when we have 50% of the power positions in the hands of women, that will disappear.
Right, I'm going to have a look and see what questions we have here. Just give me a second. Yeah, they're coming in. That's great. So I think we should. I should ask you if there are reasons to be optimistic. I mean, how long are we going to keep needing to celebrate Women's Day?
I don't know. According to the World Economic Forum, I think there is still more than 200 years to go in order to have equality between men and women in economic terms.
I think that this one also has to be aware that the world is not homogeneous, that the privileges that women are enjoying, and I consider myself a privileged woman in this part of the world, are not enjoyed by all women worldwide. So to a certain extent, the fight continues, not because we might be, satisfied with what we have or not here in this part of the world, is that there is still a lot of realities which are much, much, much more difficult than we could ever imagine taking place every day. Situations of abuse, of violence, of all sorts of, let alone the glass ceiling. We are talking about women who don't have the right to be seen, the right to wear anything that is not prescribed. The reality is and we are still 50% at least of the population of the world. So we are, I would say, only the spearhead of all this. There is a lot to be. Don't know until when are we going to celebrate, but I'm afraid that the fight is going to take still to be really widespread. If we take the focus out of this privileged part of the world, certainly the fight is still ongoing. And I have to say that there are absolutely remarkable examples of women doing excellent work worldwide in places where they are not really favored by society, as we can feel we are to a certain extent already here. And they are doing an extraordinary day-to-day work against all odds and against their own families and against their own societies to give those voices to women in places where they have never really been heard before.
I absolutely agree with that. And it's a terrible error to imagine that the problems that privileged white feminists still face in Western Europe, that that's somehow the be all and end all of this struggle. It really isn't. Even in terms of that, however, I think that some form of equality will come, but I don't imagine that I will live to see. I have no hope that I will live to see that, even in the UK. And I think that as soon as you push the boundaries wider, which we really must, this is a global struggle and not just privileged white women, then we've got, there'll be a good few, there'll be half a millennium, I think, of International Women's Day still to come.
Yeah, if I may add something, I think sometimes there is something quite funny, is that the economic difference between men and women, which is, I think, part of the discrimination, is smaller in poorer countries than in the richest countries. And this is, I think, is true for the percentage of women that reach the professor level, for instance, in universities, is much lower in countries like Germany or the UK than in the former Eastern European or the Eastern European countries, or even the Southern European countries. Why? Because the salaries are lower. So at the end, it's a fight for power, for bigger salaries, Well, it's an opportunity also that the fact that in the countries that are not so rich, maybe women have more opportunities to change things.
And I think it's very important not to fall into the trap of somehow thinking that Western feminism has got it right and has got something to teach the rest of the world. Actually, Western feminism has got quite a lot to learn from other parts of the world. I mean, you think, for example, of some of the women parliamentarians in, for example, Rwanda, where there is a really major presence of women in the legislature, has got something to teach us. So a bit of humility on the part of Western feminism is a good idea, I think.
Absolutely.
So are we ready for some questions? I have one here from, I think it's Pamela. What do the panel think the allies, and in brackets she's put men, should do to push forward change and recognise their own role in perpetuating the current power structures? Mary.
Help. Well, I think that I would encourage all allies to listen. I mean, I think that there is, and I'm not generalising here to all male allies, but sometimes you can get a bit fed up with male feminists whose version of feminism doesn't mean listening to what women actually say. So I think listening to each other is important, and letting the women speak sometimes, and learning, a bit of learning.
What's your view on allies and what they can do?
The equality is not a matter only of women; it's a matter of men and women. And I think men have part of the moral, ethical responsibility, if you want, of not tolerating something that is unfair. And I think they have been tolerating that for too long, watching how a situation was unfair, maybe for women colleagues that were equally prepared than them. And I think that happened before. I think nowadays is not something that we should accept, that they should accept. I think it's not morally acceptable that they should sustain a situation that is not fair for their colleagues, female colleagues.
And Susanna, would you like to add anything?
No. I mean, allies are. I think there is a whole discussion here about the redefinition of gender roles, and we are thinking that we also know what men want or how they want to live their lives, and maybe new generations of men have different opinions about how, for example, they want to structure their families or whatever. I am concerned about the allies. I am even more concerned about what someone would call the traitors within our lines. I'm sorry this is going to be unpopular, I know, but sometimes there are women who also perpetuate situations that are not right. And I think many of us could come up with examples. I think we have to enroll them as well. So we have to find allies, among men, and certainly we have to try to redefine also, as women, when women do things that are really not acceptable.
I have another question here from Beatrice, who asks, what is the priority in terms of education? Should educators have a better training in ensuring that all children get a fair hearing?
Yes.
And she mentions, are girls being encouraged to be more confident, and should boys be encouraged to listen more? Are they being encouraged to listen more?
Yeah, if I may say something, there was a study a few years ago published in Science, and they actually measured that self-confidence of boys and girls. And up to 5 years of age, they were equally confident in their abilities to solve problems that they were told to be very difficult. But after 6 years of age, girls started to consider themselves not capable of solving problems that they were told to be very difficult. And obviously, this is education in the families, society, schools. I think this is a big concern because this loss of self-confidence starts very early.
I think one of the difficulties is that children are only in school quite a short time, and we can encourage a different sort of set of aspirations and expectations in school. But children are out in the world and they're with their families, and this is wider than just education. This is about how all of us think little boys and little girls should be, and how to foster their aspirations. And I think teachers can sure help, but that's not the only answer or the whole answer.
This is actually something I wanted to touch upon, especially Maria and Susanna, who have both studied, obviously they're from Spain, but studied outside of Spain. How do you think that the social attitudes to women change within Spain and other countries? And I think we mentioned is that, yeah, that's it really. How is the role? Another question. What is the social norm in Spain among men's attitude towards women, and especially working mothers, and is it changing?
Well, I noticed a big difference. I was living in the US in the 90s, and I noticed a big difference, especially in published media, TV, etc. It's very difficult that in the US you would see. Well, at least when I was there in the 90s, maybe that changed later. I don't know. It was very difficult to see. The feminists there were very aggressive, I guess, in making it very difficult to see some sexist image in a magazine or on TV. While in Spain, I think there are many stereotypes in the media, printed media, TV. And this is really nobody's taking care of this. So you put the TV in the mornings, you can see all these ads of toys for children, and there is a big gender bias there. So TV series, movies, printed journals, even the main newspapers, the more reputed newspapers, you can have ads that are clearly very gender biased. So this didn't happen in the US. I don't remember it like that. So they were much more trying to avoid this. Because this was not something good. For any institution to have these gender biases or differences, put it in an ad or on the TV. So I think this is something that has to improve in Spain, and I think in general in Europe.
Yes, well, if I can say something, I think we are certainly much better than 20 or 40 years ago. That goes without saying. There is still a lot to be done. Is it different between the UK and Spain? I would say certainly it is. And my colleagues in the UK, I think, have had a much better sort of situation. There's still lots to be done, of course. Maria was talking about, the public sphere of the media and the ads and all that. And I'm sorry to insist. I think the private sphere has to be, we have to put the light on that as well. Traditional gender roles have to change. Education is paramount, as Mary was saying. It's not just that I can say something to my students at class. Is that they have to be educated at home in equality. Things are better, but we have arrived relatively late to this movement. One has to also be aware of the past history of Spain in the 20th century. We sort of started very well, and then we were halted, and we have had to caught up with movements that had been steadily growing in other countries and not in ours. And we're out of time, and I'm going. But any of a middle-aged woman from Spain who is listening can remember perfectly well how her mother, her grandmother, and herself and her daughters are four different generations in terms of equality. But I would like to really pay homage, just to, if it's this, coming to a closure, this round table, to the generation of my mother, who were women who broke for the first time, working outside the house, when actually working outside the house was still sort of not very well, who was frowned upon. Why do you work? Why, if you're married, why do you work? I remember the first time I tried to do a PhD, what a female full professor at the university told me was exactly this. Her words were, "What do you want a PhD for? You're already married." This has changed. I'm sure it has. But we have had to caught up very quickly with movements that had been growing steadily, slowlier in other parts of the world. But I think we are actually doing pretty well.
I think that's a really good place to end it. Spain has come an incredibly long way, and we all have a long way to go, I think. But there are certainly reasons to be positive, and it's been really wonderful to hear all your views. And I hope very much that the people around the world who've been tuning in have enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.